Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me out today. I really appreciate you guys coming to learn a little bit more about concussions. I know it can sometimes be a big, scary topic and something we don't know a lot about, but I'm hoping that I can simplify that for you so that you guys have a little bit more of an understanding of really what concussions are and how we can decrease our likelihood to ever get a concussion. So, play around with this here. So just a little bit about me. My name's Jessica. I am a physical therapist. I have my own clinic, Precision Physical Therapy and Performance Training, and it is on the other side of town. It's on that Blackman side of town. But I was born and raised here in Murfreesboro, so I love this community. I love being able to come out and speak to you guys, and I'm just so appreciative of our community. After I graduated from Blackman High School, I went on to the University of Tennessee, and I got my bachelor's in science and kinesiology, and then from there, I went to physical therapy school and actually went to Belmont University in Nashville. So all of that to say, why am I a physical therapist educated to come speak to you today on concussions? It's not something that we typically associate with physical therapy, but I actually am an impact concussion management trained physical therapist. So I have some advanced training in concussions and how we as physical therapists can help you guys out if you ever suffer from a concussion. So a little bit of what I want to cover today. I want to talk about what are concussions. I want to talk about how do they occur. What are some risk factors that can make us a little bit more likely to suffer from a concussion? What are some things we can maybe do around our home to make us less likely to have a concussion? And then what are some general signs and symptoms of a concussion? Sometimes we have concussions and we might not even know that we have a concussion. And then what are kind of the effects of PT and how can we as physical therapists help you out if you ever do suffer from a concussion or have a family member who may suffer from a concussion? So a concussion is a mild traumatic brain injury. It typically occurs when we have a blow or a jolt to the head. Just like if we broke our leg or our ankle, arm, and those parts of our bodies don't function well, if we have that blow or that jolt to our brain's not going to function well. So things that concussions can affect is maybe not even just our movement, but it can affect our mood, it can affect our vision, it can affect our response to light. So many things that make us who we are can be affected if we have a concussion. So I think it's really important to know what that is and know what the signs and symptoms are. So if this ever happens to you, you can seek appropriate help for this. And a big thing is that even though we might not be able to visibly see the effects of a concussion on the outside, they can still be very present in our daily life. So how do concussions typically occur? So typically in this population, I see them most often happening from a fall. With my younger patients who are in like sports, sometimes we'll see that from like a head-on collision, maybe in football or soccer or a sport like that. But the other way that they can happen is sometimes by simple accidents, such as a car accident. Maybe you get rear-ended and you have that jolt with your body. Those can also cause some mild concussions as well. So any type of sudden impact that causes the body or the head to have this whipping or jerking motion can cause a concussion for us. So even minor bumps or bangs into a wall can cause some concussions sometimes as well. But I think the biggest thing for us is to know what can we do to prevent falls to make us less likely to have a concussion. These pictures I wanted to include for you guys. I used this computer system to help me make this presentation, and it used AI to help pull these pictures up, so I didn't have to deal with any copyright. But if you look really closely, they're pretty funny. Like this guy, I think he has eyes but doesn't really have eyes, has holes in his eyes. I just thought that these were some funny pictures that I could include. So let's talk about some risk factors for concussions. Basically all of these that I'm going to mention, I want to talk about how we can correct these to make us less likely to have a concussion in the future. So one of the big things that I see that leads us to falling and maybe incurring a concussion would be balance and gait deficits. So basically this just means maybe we're not able to steady ourselves in space, or maybe we have difficulty when we're walking, whether it's for long distances or even household distances. So the way that I like to address these deficits is by really doing an analysis of our patient's balance and the way that they walk in order to address some of the impairments that they might have to make them less likely to suffer from a fall. Another thing that can cause us to fall, lose our balance, can be just generalized muscle weakness. So I see this a lot of times in patients who just their legs aren't quite strong enough to support them for long distances, or again, like I said, even household distances. Maybe you're bending down to pick something up and you can't get all the way back up. We don't have that strength. So addressing strength and kind of building that musculature in the lower half of our body can also decrease our risk to have a concussion. Another big one is vision deficits. So if you cannot see well, that can actually impact our balance and put us at more of a risk for having a fall. I like to talk to patients about the balance system. And I'll take just a quick moment to do that right here. Our balance system is composed of 3 big parts. So we have our eyes, we have the bottoms of our feet, and then we have our inner ear. So if any one of those systems is not firing at optimal capacity, or maybe they're not communicating well to each other, that can actually make us more likely to have a fall or lose our balance, and then as a result, have an injury to that head that can cause a concussion. So I think vision is a big thing that we don't always think about, but it is very important with our maintaining our balance and keeping us just very safe. Another thing that can cause our more of a likelihood to have a fall or a collision is just various different chronic conditions. Just a quick raise of hand. Anybody in here have arthritis in any of their joints? Yeah. So that's a big one that I see. So sometimes the pain that's caused by arthritis can sometimes cause our legs to give out on us, or us just to not have good control and an ability to support ourselves. So things such as arthritis, Parkinson's disease, even diabetes or heart disease, all of those can impact various different functions in our body. So for Parkinson's, I see a lot of patients lose some sensation, but also lose the ability to control the movements in their body, which can make them more likely for a fall. With my diabetic patients, they get what we call peripheral neuropathy, which can mean that they lose some of that sensation on the bottoms of their feet. And again, that allows us not to be as steady. And again, those are just a few examples, but definitely some different chronic conditions can put us at a higher risk for a fall, as well as just different medications that we might be taking. Sometimes I've noticed with a lot of my patients that they might not even know all of the medications that they're on or why they're taking all of these medications. So I think it's very, very important when a physician puts you on a new type of medication. Why? Why are we on this medication, and how is it going to help us? Just for your own knowledge, so that you know that maybe it has a side effect that could be more detrimental to you. So we want to always be asking why and know the answers and feel confident in the medications that we're on, because they can sometimes put us at more of a risk to have a fall. And sometimes I've found that if we don't ask those questions, sometimes we'll miss those things. So I think it's just very important to know the type of medications you're on and know the side effects. That doesn't mean that you're arguing with the physician or anything like that. It just can mean that you're knowledgeable about what you're taking and how it can affect your daily life. Another big thing that can put us at a risk for a fall would be cognitive impairments. I don't think there's any more to say there other than, if our cognitive function is not firing at all cylinders, sometimes we have more of a likelihood to have a trip, have a fall, as well as home hazards. And this is a big one that I want to focus on. We'll focus on that a little bit more on our next slide. But how can we equip our homes so that we don't fall? Even myself, actually last week, I was laying on my couch, I was cuddled up in a blanket, and my dog was barking at the window, and I was trying to get him to calm down. And I jumped up so quickly, but I had this big blanket and a rug in front of me, and I stood up and I went flat down on my hands and knees. And so maybe if I had been more aware of, I have a rug here, I could have prevented that fall. But I think it's just really important for us to optimize our homes so that we are not going to trip over different things or have different hazards that can make us more predisposed to have a fall. Additionally, footwear and foot deformities can also increase our risk of a fall, or just not knowing about our blood pressure. I don't know if any of you guys have ever stood up and your blood pressure drops and you get real lightheaded feeling. That, again, can increase our risk for a fall as well. So diving into these home hazards, what are some things around our homes that can put us at more of a risk for having a fall? So a big thing that I see is clutter. we're all guilty of it. I have clutter around my house all the time, but if we have clutter on our floors or even on our surfaces, we can easily get kind of tripped up over these things and have that fall. Additionally, and this is a big one that I see, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, but loose rugs. So if we have those rugs that are not really firmly planted to the ground, it's so easy for us to just have a little trip of our foot and off we go. So, ooh, poor lighting, talking about it. This is another big one. I don't know if you guys have lamps around your homes. I know I do at home, but if we don't have optimal lighting, sometimes that can mess with our vision, and then again, as we know, lead us to more of a risk for a fall. And then this is another big one, lack of handrails. So handrails are really used for safety. And so sometimes I'll have patients who maybe they have a handrail on one side of their stairwell but don't on the other side, and they have difficulty going up and down the stairs, and this, again, can just lead us at a risk for a fall. But we also think of handrails in, various other places in our home, especially the bathroom. So if you're someone who has noticed that it becomes more difficulty for you to maintain your balance in the bathroom, thinking about adding some handles or some rails in your bathroom to really hold on to. A big thing that I see is people will think that they can hold on to furniture or hold on to surfaces, and sometimes we miss, sometimes they aren't stable enough, and they'll just fall out from under us. And so just optimizing our home to have these kind of safety nets that keep us up and balanced and upright. Again, another big one here is floor transition strips. I don't know if you guys have homes that have, like, in between the kitchen and the dining room, you'll have like the little transition strip on the floor. And I've been so guilty of it myself sometimes, just like kind of stubbing my toe on the little transition strip. But sometimes we can take a tumble from that. And it's not necessarily that we need to get rid of these, but just making ourselves aware that these could maybe potentially have a risk for us having a fall. And we kind of already talked about bathrooms. And then the last one that I'll touch on is furniture walking. I don't know if you guys are guilty of it, but I know sometimes when we're in tight spaces, we'll walk on the furniture, we'll put our hands on the sofa, we'll put our hands on the chair. These things can tip out from under us really easily if we are putting a lot of support on them. So I know it's inevitable that we'll use them at some point in time, but just being aware, like, hey, can I support myself? Can I help myself upright? Or maybe, we've been putting off having some sort of assistive device. We don't like walking with a cane or a walker or, something of that sort, because we're like, no, we can do it. Sometimes those things are there for our safety, not to enable us, but to actually make us stronger and make us be able to negotiate our own home a little bit better. So furniture walking is a big thing that I discourage, just because I've seen too many times where we've used some piece of furniture to help us get from place to place, and it goes out from under us, and it happens so quick. And then the last one is pets. I love pets. Pets are great. But, how many times has one of our pets gotten the zoomies, as I like to call it, and ran round and around us, and we, have a misstep. Again, we don't get rid of our pets because of this, but we just become aware that, hey, I need to, when my pets are running around or have the case of the zoomies, that I feel really steady and secure in where I am so that I don't let them knock me off. So those are just some big things around the home that I see that can decrease our risk for falls. And I think anything that we can do to make any small adjustments that we can make to make us less likely to have a fall are really important. So what about some different signs and symptoms of concussions? So we'll have a fall, and sometimes the signs and symptoms might not be immediate. So we might be sore, we might have some bumps and bruises on ourselves, but what are some other things that can be lead us on or clue us in that we might need to seek additional medical help? A big thing that I see is headaches post-fall. So if you ever have a fall and you have a headache after your fall, that is a huge red flag that, hey, we may need to seek some more help. This can be a dull headache, this can be a pounding headache, whatever it is, we definitely want to seek medical attention for that. Other things that I see are dizziness, nausea, or vomiting. Those are some big things that can clue us in that, hey, maybe I might want to just go get checked out for a concussion. And then this is a big one that I think people don't think about all the time, but confusion, memory problems, or difficulty concentrating. We might think, hey, it's just an off day, or I have difficulty with these all the times. But if we've had a fall and then we're having some of these deficits, I think it's very, very important to go seek medical help. Along in that same light is sensitivity to light. So if you're not someone who is typically sensitive to light and you have a fall and then the sun starts blaring in, or you've got your light in your kitchen and it's really just, you feel very sensitive to it, you feel like you're maybe going to get a little bit of a headache from it, you can't glare right into it, another huge warning sign for us, hey, let's go get some help and get checked out here. Along with that comes that blurred or double vision as well. And then obviously if we have some slurred speech that has never been there before, that is another huge warning sign for us. This one here, irritability or mood changes. I see people not take this one very seriously sometimes, and it is a huge indicator that something has gone wrong. So if we think about an injury to our brain controls everything in our body, and it controls our moods. So if we have a typical cheery demeanor and then we have a fall and we notice ourselves getting a little bit more irritated or agitated, a huge red flag for us to go seek some help. I know about 3 years ago, I personally had a concussion myself. I was throwing a ball against a wall, it came back and hit me in the head, and I thought, no big deal. But later that day I got extremely tired, and then my husband was telling me, like, you're just not yourself, you're not acting like yourself. And that's when I personally went in to go seek some medical attention myself. I can help recognize these signs in other people, but sometimes it's hard to recognize it in myself. So I had to be my own patient and go seek some help for that, because these mood changes, again, are just such a huge warning sign for us. And then we've been talking about difficulty with balance or coordination. Again, another big warning sign. So how do we seek help? Often when I have someone who has a concussion or thinks that they have a concussion, I might not be their first stop. So even though I have advanced certification in concussion management, sometimes patients don't think to come to a PT to help them with their concussion issues, because they might be having some of these more visual deficits, difficulty concentrating, all of those things. And I don't know about you, but that's typically not something that I see most of my patients saying, hey, physical therapist, you can help me with that. But seeking any type of professional health care right away is very important. So whether that means I go to urgent care, whether that means I make an immediate appointment with my physician, just to be assessed for the likelihood that you may have a concussion, and to just screen out anything that might be more important than that. Sometimes when we have a big fall, we might have some internal bleeding, all of those kinds of things. Not to make it scary, but just to make us aware that we definitely need to seek some medical help. That is our first step when we think we might have a concussion. Another big thing that plays into concussion management is getting enough rest. So typically when I see patients who have a concussion, they get very, very, very tired. And I know sometimes it's difficult for us to allow ourselves to have enough rest. We might, other people in our family might say, hey, you're being lazy. I see that thrown out to people a lot. Or, hey, you need to do X, Y, Z. Or you have your routine that you do on a daily basis. Maybe your routine is that you come here every day. If you think you've suffered from a concussion, it's so, so, so important to allow yourself to get enough rest. Rest is one of the ways that our brain starts to heal itself. And if we're firing at all cylinders and we have so much external stimulation, whether it's we've got the TV playing at volume 90, or we're listening to music really loud, or maybe we come and exercise, some of those things can be too much stimulation for our brain to actually adequately recover from the concussion that we might be suffering from. And just some other healthcare providers that could be helping you along the way if you're suffering from a concussion could be cognitive therapy, physical therapy like myself, and included in that physical therapy can be balance training. Okay, so what do I as a physical therapist do to help you after you've suffered from a concussion? A big thing that can result as from a concussion is dizziness and vertigo. So this is something that I deal with a lot. Dizziness and vertigo are two very different things. So a lot of times I'll have someone come to me and say, hey, Jess, I think that I've got vertigo. And the first question that I ask them is, Are you spinning or is the room spinning? Once we kind of pick at some of those question and answer, I can really help them discern, do they have just generalized dizziness as a result of their concussion, or do they have actually true vertigo? And treating those different types of dizziness is very different. But it's one of the big things that I look at when I have patients who have a concussion, because it's something that I've seen, result from a concussion many, many times. That big jolt or blow to the head can cause us to just have generalized dizziness or true vertigo. What treatment intervention looks like for those is a lot of different tasks where we're getting your eyes and your inner ears to talk to each other, for them to communicate so that our brain knows where it is in space, and so that we can kind of just start healing that system a little bit strategically, so that you have optimal function post-concussion. Another big thing that I see that I work on with my patients who have had concussions is balance deficits. So this is whether the balance deficit results from the concussion, or maybe they've had balance issues and that's what caused them to fall and have the concussion on the front end. This is one of my favorite types of treatments to do with patients, because I like to format it in like playing a game. So I essentially build obstacle courses for my patients, and we take strategic obstacles and we learn how to steady ourselves on those obstacles. We learn how to get our eyes, our ears, and our feet to all fire together to improve our overall balance. So again, this is one of my favorite things that I do, because I feel like I get to play along with my patients and I get to have a little bit of fun with them, and I love challenging my patients with this. So this is stuff that is as simple as, hey, can we just balance on our own? Or maybe can we balance with our feet in various different positions where we're bringing our feet closer together, to stepping over objects, or working on objects that maybe have a little bit of compliance, meaning maybe they respond differently underneath us than like what a hard floor would. So like a foam pad or a trampoline, different tools like that to help us really improve our balance and set us up for success. And then the last two things that I see kind of happen in tandem when I have patients who have concussions is neck pains and headaches. This is another kind of subspecialty of mine, is neck pains and headaches. And a lot of the time after we have this big motion with our head, I mean, if you think about it, you have this whiplash motion where your head really quickly gets kind of slung back and forth in space. It can cause a lot of neck pain afterwards. We can have our muscles just get really angry, and they need help calming down and trusting yourself that it's okay to move our head again. So this is one of the big areas that I work with. And then as a result of some of that tension in our neck, we can get headaches post-concussion. So I use lots of different tools to address this, including just like my hands to massage out those tissues. But another big tool that I use in this area is what we call dry needling. So I'll go in with dry needling. So we go in with needles that are very similar to the acupuncture needles. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of it before, but we'll go directly into those muscles, and it will help calm down the muscles and break up some of that tension that's in the muscles. And I've seen it be used as a very successful tool to help when we have neck pain or headaches, as well as other different injuries that we might have. Awesome. So what are the big benefits of PT? We've kind of gone over this already, but fall prevention is huge. Anything that we can do to help you decrease your risk for having a fall, I take very seriously with my job, and I think that it's one of the best ways that I can serve you as a physical therapist. Secondly, we work to improve mobility. We work to get your joints moving well and get you confident in the way that your body moves so that you can stabilize yourself. A big one, reducing pain. Again, whether that's breaking up some tension that you might have in your body or your head or your neck post a fall, post concussion, we can always help with that. And then we're also just able to kind of speed up the recovery process. No one likes to be in pain for long. No one likes to be suffering from symptoms for a long time. But with strategic ways to treat your concussion symptoms, physical therapists can definitely help speed up that process for you, as well as just prevent long-term issues. So maybe this was your first fall, you suffered a concussion. What can we do to prevent you from having this issue again? How can I help you long-term improve your mobility and well-being to decrease your risk for falls? Vestibular. Yes. So your vestibular system is when I talk about our inner ears. So it is a system that plays a big role in our balance. So earlier I was talking about, we have three kind of big components of our balance system. We have our eyes, our inner ears, and our feet. So our inner ears is that vestibular system, and it really impacts our ability for our brain to recognize where we are in space. So a lot of times if I see people who have issues with their vestibular system, they're very dizzy, maybe they're lopsided. Sometimes I'll see people who they walk kind of off to one side or they veer off to one side. And that can be directly related to how their vestibular system is working. And the way that we fix those issues is we work on the way that our ears and our eyes and our brain connect and talk to each other. So a big exercise that I'll do with people is sometimes I'll have them have a playing card in their hand, and we're steadying ourselves on a playing card, and we're just moving our head back and forth, making sure that we kind of stay steady. That's kind of a base for how I expand on how to treat that vestibular system. Was that an okay explanation for you? I know it can be kind of...
What causes that problem?
What causes that problem? So many different things.
Meniere's disease.
Yes, Meniere's disease is a huge thing. Yeah, Meniere's disease is a big thing. Sometimes so we know we have nerves all throughout our body, and our nerves impact different systems that we have as kind of the power source. So sometimes the nerve that impacts that vestibular system or that inner ear, sometimes it's maybe not communicating right to your brain, so that can be something that can cause it. Sometimes people have a fall that can cause vestibular system issues. Also, I've seen people just sometimes have a systemic reaction, or maybe they have some sort of sickness that comes on, and it can just kind of make their vestibular system off kilter. So it's hard to pinpoint one thing that causes it, but the good thing is once we have that kind of side effect, we know how to treat it pretty well. And every person's a little bit different, so I would say the vestibular system is one of the systems that we're still learning about all of the time. So a lot of different things can impact them. It's not just one thing, and it might be something different for every person that impacts their vestibular system. So I don't know, a few slides back I was talking about the difference between dizziness and vertigo. So you'll hear people say, oh, I have vertigo, but maybe they're just dizzy. So when you have this big room spinning symptom where you might just sit up and the whole world stops spinning, that's what we refer to as true vertigo or BPPV. Basically what happens is inside your inner ear, you have these calcium crystals, and they belong in one spot. And sometimes they can get out of their spot. They can kind of dislodge into a different area of your inner ear that has these little hairs on it, and they'll touch these hairs. And what those hairs do is they communicate to our brain where we are in space. So if they communicate with these hairs in the wrong way, they cause us to have a faulty output of where we are in space. So it'll make us feel like the world's spinning around us. So that's what those crystals are. I know it's hard to kind of explain it because it's something we can't see, but basically it's those calcium crystals. They just get kind of dislodged into a different system, or not a different system, but a different area in our inner ear. And that can cause the symptoms that we have. And then we treat it by doing different positions with our head. So you'll hear people say that they've had an Epley done before. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. An Epley maneuver. So it's a different way that we move a patient's head in order to direct those crystals along the correct path.
And chiropractors don't do it.
Some will do them, some won't. But yes, and same thing with physical therapists. Some physical therapists will do them, some physical therapists won't do them. So what I do that's different than maybe some other physical therapists is not everyone's, without getting too in the weeds here, not everyone's crystals can be dislodged in the same place. And so there are actually multiple different ways that we can spin your head in space to direct the crystals to where they need to go. So it's a wild, wild world there in that inner ear, but not every maneuver will work for every patient. And so it's really important to go to someone if you ever have that vertigo, whether it results from a concussion or whether it's from something else, to try to find a healthcare practitioner who is really certified in treating that vestibular system, because not everyone does the advanced training to be able to distinguish how to best treat you. So sometimes we have just a little bit of a generalized approach. So that's why you'll have patient or friends maybe who have said they had vertigo and that they can't get rid of it, that it's always there. But that's kind of a little bit of a spiel on the inner ear, the vestibular system, and those crystals. It's so important to find the right type of healthcare providers. That just branching off from concussions, but whatever you're suffering from, you want to find someone who really knows about those conditions and can treat them well. In my personal practice, I've seen patients of all ages. I've seen patients as young as mid-20s suffer from it, and I've seen patients as old as 90s suffer from it. I do see it happen a little bit more in women. I would say, just from personal experience, I've seen more women prone to it. But again, it's one of those conditions where there's not a true cause and effect. So many different things can cause us to have vertigo, and it's different for every person. Let's see. Oh, and then last thing, it's really important, and this kind of goes along with what we've been talking about, to have a multidisciplinary approach when you have a concussion. So that might mean that you need to seek help from a neurologist, a physical therapist, or occupational therapist, as well as a cognitive therapist. It's just really important to surround yourself with a good team of healthcare providers who can help treat you fully. All of our goals should be to get you back to functioning as well as you possibly can. And even though concussions can be a big, scary topic, I found that most people can have a full recovery if they're treated early and treated well. So, do you guys have any other questions or anything? Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for letting me come out today. I really appreciate the time that you've let me spend with you guys. And if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I think we've got some cards floating around, so you can shoot me an email. I also respond via text. I know that text becomes more popular and it's easier for some people. So if that's a way that you like to reach out, always feel free to do that as well. So